You saw a beautiful pattern on the internet like my mini hamburger here, but you want it bigger, like this one or this one, or even bigger like this big guy here, but you have no idea how to do it without changing the pattern, then this video is for you. If you're new here in the channel, I am Bianca from Crochet, and in today's video, I'll teach you some special tricks to change the size of your amigurumi without changing the pattern. I received this question hundreds of times before, and I was super excited to make this video for you. And this one, I am especially excited because I crocheted, well, I have to be honest with you. There are a couple of hamburgers here with me. I have 5 hamburgers in different sizes, but I didn't crochet all of them myself. I only crocheted the small version because this was the first one that I did and I created, and the big guy here that I wanted to be like a pillow. But the other 3 hamburgers that I have here were crocheted by my husband. I have to tell you the truth. And there are a couple of reasons why sometimes we want to change the size of a pattern that we find in the internet. Maybe you received a custom order and the client wants your amigurumi, their amigurumi to be bigger, and you cannot find a pattern that matches with the client's requests. Or sometimes you already have the pattern that you want. Like the example of the mini hamburger here. You already have an interesting and beautiful pattern, you like it, but this is not the size that you want. You want it bigger, or I don't know, you want it smaller. Although this is the smallest one that I have here, it could have been crocheted with an even smaller yarn and crochet hook size. But yeah, you already have a pattern that you like and it's beautiful, and the pattern is exactly what the client needs, but he wants it in a different size. So here are a few tips, and actually I have 3 tips to tell you how to do these changes in the sizes of the amigurumi without changing the pattern. So tip number 1, change the yarn type from cotton to polyester. Just so you know, from my mini hamburger here to this one that it's like, I'm looking at the other hamburgers here, I think this is like in the middle, yeah, the middle size of all the other hamburgers that I have. But this one, I used 100% cotton yarn, and with this one, I used 100% polyester. For the mini version of my hamburger, my mini hamburger, I crocheted with this yarn here. This is France Cotton 8/4. I never know how people say it, but okay, France Cotton 8/4 mercerized. It's 100% cotton from Hobby, which you can see. I really hope you can see. And Hobby, and I mentioned it before, but I'll say it again, Hobby recommends a crochet hook from 3 to 3.5 millimeter crochet hook size. But I crocheted the mini hamburger with a 2.2 millimeter because this is usually the crochet hook that I use for this type of cotton yarn because I like my stitches pretty tight. So just so you know, 2.2 millimeter crochet hook size with this one, and I have this mini hamburger that is like, I think it's 5 centimeters or something like that. While with this one here, I crocheted with the polyester fiber. It's kind of messy because I use this yarn quite a lot, and you will understand later in the video why this yarn is kind of messy, but it's worth it, completely worth it. Okay, this yarn is the Toucan yarn from Hobby. It's 100% polyester, and I don't have the label here with me right now because I removed it, which is something that I usually don't recommend doing. For this yarn, they recommend a 7 millimeter crochet hook size, I guess. I'm quite sure it is 7 millimeter, but I crocheted with a 4 or 5, something like that. And the amigurumi ended up with like 12 centimeters, something like that. So you see that I more than doubled the size of the amigurumi just by changing the yarn type from cotton, which is a very thin thread that I like to use in my amigurumis, to polyester fiber, which I don't know, you can call plushie chenille. People have different names for this kind of thread, but this is 100% polyester, and this type of yarns, they are usually thicker than the cotton ones. One of my customers sent me this message a couple of days ago that she received a custom order and she already had the pattern that she wanted and the pattern that the client wanted as well, and she didn't want to like spend more money with a new pattern and etc., but the client wanted it like way bigger. So she used this tip. She sent me a message like, thank you so much for your tips. I just changed the yarn type. The amigurumi ended up with like 40 centimeters. The client was happy and I was happy because I didn't have to spend more money with a new pattern. So it is simple, but very, very effective. Tip number 2, keep the same yarn type, but change the thickness. I know I keep showing you the hobby yarns all the time, and I have to say this video is not sponsored. I really wish it was. But this video is not sponsored. It's just because, you know, I live in Finland and hobby is from Denmark. Countries are very close and shipping is usually free due to the amount of yarns that I buy. I don't buy that often, by the way, but when I buy, I usually take like a great amount of yarn, so I don't have to pay the shipping fee. But since hobby ships to Finland and they have like this amazing variety of yarns, they have all sorts of threads you can imagine, like 4 or 5 different types of polyester fiber. I think I cannot even count the amount of cotton yarns that they have, and the variety of yarns that they have is so good that for me it's worth it. It's worth it to buy the yarn from their website. But I'll say it again, this video is not sponsored. So in case it's not available for you in your country or you don't like, yeah, I like the yarn, but this is not a rule. Maybe for some reason you don't like it that much, and that's totally fine. You can use the tips and adapt them. Oh, I have to drink some water. And adapt them to the yarns that you find next to you, next to your home place, and the stores that are available for you. I know that, for example, Drops have a good variety of yarns as well, and they also have these cotton yarns that change the thickness, because I have a client that likes the thicker one. I prefer the thin thread, so you can use whatever yarns that you have available for you. But going back to tip number 2, I said that the tip is to keep the same yarn type, I mean the same yarn composition, and just change the thickness. And what do I mean by that? In the beginning of the video, I showed you this yarn that is France Cotton 8.4, but Hobby also has the 8.6 and 8.8. And what does it mean? These numbers here, what they mean is that the thickness of the yarn changes. So while with this one, they recommend a crochet hook from 3 to 3.5, and I'm saying it by heart. I'm not 100% sure if I'm right, but the 8.6 recommends, I don't know, a 3.5 to 4, and the 8.8 recommends a crochet hook a little bit bigger. So you see that you keep exactly the same yarn, I mean the same yarn type, the same yarn composition, but just by changing the thickness, you will change also the crochet hook size that you use. And since the yarns are thicker, your amigurumis will be bigger as well. I don't have these other hobby yarns here to show you or to give the example, because I usually don't crochet my amigurumis with thicker cotton yarns. Usually when I want them bigger, I prefer to work with the polyester fiber because it's more soft, and I really like working with plushie, chenille, fluffy yarns. I know it's kind of a controversial topic. Lots of people don't like it, but I do. So when I need cotton, when I want to work with cotton yarn, this is the yarn that I use. This is my favorite, the 8.4. That's why I don't have the other ones to show you or to give any example. But just know that if you want to change the size of your amigurumi, you can just go to the France Cotton 8.8, for example. And well, I think you will probably double the size of your amigurumi just by changing the thickness of the yarn. Well, in the beginning of this video, I promised you 3 tips, and don't worry because the third one is gold. Just stay here with me because you will love it. And oh, I always get excited with this tip. But in case you're still here with me in this video and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, this is the moment that you will remember to do it. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and also to the newsletter, to my newsletter actually, so you'll keep updated on the news, tips, tricks, everything that I carefully prepare for this channel every week. And this way you can also support my job, so I keep bringing you some valuable content for your amigurumi journey. Now going back to our tip number 3, I told you that it was gold, and it is. I started crocheting amigurumis in 2015, but I gathered the courage to start selling my amigurumis in 2016. And in my first orders, I did it quite a few times and it always worked. So tip number 3, you use the same yarn, but you crochet with both endings of the thread. Confusing? It's not. Just stay here with me because you will understand what I mean. One of the things I like the most about this tip, and that's why I left it to the end of the video, is because you don't change the thickness. You don't change the yarn type. You don't have to buy more yarn. So of course you won't spend more money. You just used exactly the same skein that you already have. You have to remove the label. I know I told you this a couple of times here in the channel, and I also said it in this video already. I usually don't like to lose the label because when we lose the label, sometimes we forget the number of the color or the name of the color, or even if you have like lots of different brands with you, you might forget like which brand was this skein. So it's difficult to buy another one in case you need in the future. So remove it, but keep it next to you. So after you finish crocheting your amigurumi, you put the label back, okay? But let's remove it. And what do I mean when I say that you have to crochet? What do I mean when I say that you have to crochet with both endings of the thread? This is also something that I like from Hobby. I know it looks like this video is sponsored, but it really isn't. It's very easy to pull the thread from the inside of the skein. This is what I usually like to do with all the yarn types, all the brands. I usually pull the thread from the inside of the skein, so I don't have to remove the label. So whenever I am crocheting an amigurumi, I keep the label and I pull the yarn from the inside. But to use this technique, you have to remove the label because you will pull the yarn, the thread from the inside like this, and the other ending that it's here, like in the middle, because it was, I don't know, wrapped around the yarn like this, you will also use this tip, okay? 2 threads together like this, and you crochet with these 2 threads together. And I will show you the hamburgers that I have here because I did this. Actually, as I said, I crocheted the tiny one, and the one with this tip here, our tip number 3, my husband crocheted himself. But it really works, and I will show you the different sizes of the amigurumi in the end. But of course it will be bigger because you're using double the size of the yarn. So for the mini hamburger, I crocheted with a 2.2mm crochet hook size. I told you that already. But when I crocheted with 2 threads together, I used a 3 or 3.5, not me, my husband. I guess, yeah, he used a 3mm crochet hook size. And the amigurumi ended up way bigger than this version here. So here it is. You can see the difference between these 2 hamburgers. This one was the one that I crocheted with only 1 thread and the 2.2mm crochet hook size, while this one, my husband crocheted with the 3mm crochet hook size and using both endings of the thread. This one is, let me measure it again because I think it's smaller. Oh no, it's 5 centimeters. Okay, so this one ended up with 5 centimeters, while this one ended up with 8 centimeters. You see that it's way bigger than the first one, and I didn't have to buy new yarns. I didn't have to change the yarn types in case you don't like to work with polyester, for example. So this tip is really effective and it really works because I did it a couple of times when I used to make custom orders, and everyone was always satisfied in the end. And I also have the same example using the polyester fiber. This shoe here, my husband crocheted himself. This version here, we used only the plushie yarn, the toucan yarn, and it's a bit mixed because here we have baby snuggle, honey bunny, toucan, but this is another video here in the channel. I can leave the link somewhere in this one. So you see that for this hamburger here, I only used like 1 thread, the toucan or honey bunny, baby snuggle, whatever, but I only used like 1 thread, let's say it like this, like 1 thread, while for this one here we used tip number 3, which is using both endings of the thread to crochet with double the yarn. And again, you can see how much the size changed. Let's measure it because I forgot to do that before. With only 1 thread, it ended up 12. Oh yeah, 12. So with only one thread, it ended up with 12 centimeters. Using like both endings of the thread, it ended up with 16 centimeters. It is a bit bigger. It's not like double the size, but it is a bit bigger. And you can see that it changed a lot. I really like both versions. This one, I wish I had like a bigger eye size, but I didn't, so I used the same eye size. But I really like these versions, and when I put it like this, you can see that the size changed quite a bit, and we used the same thread. So you see that in the end, using all the tips that I gave you today, which are quite simple, I have 5 different hamburgers using the same pattern. One is a pin in which I put in my backpack when I go to university, and everyone likes it. Everyone compliments this beautiful mini hamburger here, which you can grab for free if you sign up to my newsletter, by the way. And I also have this big guy here, which is my hamburger pillow that decorates my apartment, and it's in my couch now. But now I want to hear from you. Do you have any other tips to change the size of your amigurumi without changing the pattern? Or have you ever used any of the tips that I shared in today's video? Please let me know in the comments, because this is something that I really want to know from you. You see that I worked really hard in this video, like crocheting 5 different sizes of hamburgers. It was not me who did all of this, but me and my husband, we worked really hard to bring this content to you. So I'd love to hear your opinion if you have ever used any of this technique. But if you're curious to know which yarn did I use for this big guy here, because this is an even bigger polyester chenille plushie yarn, and you're curious to know about this one here, I'll leave you this other video because I am sure you're going to like it too.